everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Card Talk, a podcast where we spend just a little bit of time talking about cards from Lord of the Rings card game. I'm your host, Dave Walsh.
I'm Ted Bannock. I love talking about cards, and missing his ride today is Grant.
That is funnier than ever because
Grant is missing the Card Talk bus today, but we still got a really great episode for you. Pretty excited. So we're going to do something totally different that we've never done before as part of our intro. And David, I'm going to kick it back to you to thank the patrons.
Oh, whoa. I don't know if I can handle the change in format.
Totally
here.
New thing. I know we didn't really plan this or anything. I'm just kind of throwing it out there. I'm hoping you can. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but
I think I can manage them. Yeah, thanks,
okay.
Ted.
Great.
Okay, so first of all, for anybody who is wanting to become a patron, if you want to join the ranks of our patron, right down here below Eric's face, or covering Eric's face, you'll see our address. It says patreon.com/cardtalk2018, and you can join at any level that you want. And at the $5 level, you get big swag. At any level, you get little swag. So, and we are getting ready to hand out the swag at Con of the Rings. So I will start handing out the big swag starting, I guess, September 30th is when I'm coming into town, and that's when I will officially hand out my first piece of swag to the first person who is officially a patron. So that'll be a lot of fun. But I want to make sure that we thank all our patrons, and so thank you to Mark and Jason, who are both new this month. Thank you, Mark and Jason. Miles, Ryan, sorry, excuse me. Now that I don't have to do it all in one breath, Ted, I feel
you take your time.
There's a lot of pressure
totally
taken
relaxed
off my shoulders here. Yeah, it feels good here. Okay, Manuel, Grant, Katie, Eric, Rachel, Tony, Valentin, Eric, Dern's father, Moritz, Anders, Shane, Micah, Chris, Reagan, Robert, Brandon, Scott, Joe, Edmund, Peter, Niall, Carl, Vardine, James, Joshua, Matt, Russ, Justin, Jason, Robert, Kyle, Daniel, Mike, Robert, David, Sean, Lou, Phil, Joseph, and Dominic. Wow. 45 patrons, and we're doing pretty good here. So
yeah, it keeps growing. Eventually, we're gonna just have to do our own episode. I'm just thanking the patrons because the list
we'll just do
keeps
one
getting
month.
bigger.
One show of the month. We'll just be like, thank you to our patrons.
Yeah.
But
yeah, thanks everyone. We appreciate joining at any level, and hope to keep bringing you guys some thrilling content, which we have today.
Which we really have today. I feel like it's been a while since we've had a guest host on the show. Make sure I get my stuff correct here. So Eric, welcome back to Card Talk.
Yeah, thanks for having me back on, guys.
Yeah, and for anybody who doesn't know, Eric was on our show, I would guess it's probably about 6 months ago, because you were spoiling a card from the ALEP deluxe box. Mm-hmm. So, Eric, how have you been?
I've been doing well. Yeah. Yep. Summer finally kind of ending here, so getting back into the swing of things with a new school year and all that sort of stuff here now. So
yeah. Are you still in school? What are you, a junior?
Yes. Yep, like 12th year, 30th year. I don't know, somewhere in there.
Yeah. So last I knew, we were leaving you to read every single flavor text on every single card and marking it in the Legendarium, while your wife was doing something way more academic than that, like earning master's degree and things. So how does that project find you?
That's all done, thankfully, for me there on that one, and her grad school is also done. So significantly less of that sort of reading for either of us, thankfully.
Is she now Dr. Mrs. Eric, or is she Master Mrs. Eric?
she got her master's, and I'd probably be more like I am undergrad Mr. Her.
Okay, well, congratulations to your wife. It's always a it's always a huge accomplishment to finish up a graduate degree or any degree. It's good to have all that education under your belt. So, way to go to her. So, I guess, I should say that I should ask you what you've been playing, but I think you're one of the lead playtesters for ALEP. So I feel like you spend all your gaming time playing the ALEP stuff. Is that a fair assessment, or is that a little overblown?
Maybe a little overblown now. I think that was definitely true in the lead up to the release of the deluxe. I find some more time to play around a little bit with the official FFG content now as well. But I would say it's probably still, I don't know, 80-20
80/20.
all at playtesting versus official stuff.
Well, it's what you guys have done with the ALEP stuff is phenomenal, and it spending hours and hours playtesting obviously comes through, especially those scaling effects that happen in that third quest of the deluxe box, the Horse Lord's Ire. Like discard one or two, or like all those crazy things that are going on there. It's the playtesting obviously has been an integral part of all of that. So Eric, you guys do a great job over there at ALEP with everything, but it's obvious that the playtesters are a key part of the whole thing, right?
Yeah, we've got a really, really great group now. I think we were maybe a little shorter than we would have liked to have been before, but we've got, probably 10 to 15 people now that are putting in pretty regular play testing, and they're great. Couldn't do it without all of them.
It's tough work.
It is, yeah.
It's play testing for any game, and I've done enough gaming in my life where, you play a card game or a board game and you come across some wonky mechanic or something that seems broken or just doesn't function. You're like, did they play test this at all?
Nope.
And so, we know it's since a long extended party is working to, you guys are just trying to make sure that doesn't happen. Try to create relatively balanced content that people will still enjoy, and it's a tough job. So tip my hat to you, good sir, and the rest of the party.
Before we get into the spoiler, Eric, what's on the horizon here for today is September 5th, but we're going to put this out probably September 14th ish. So I mean that's within a week. So asking this question won't be outdated by the time the show airs. What's on the horizon here for ALEP before we get into the spoiler card that we're talking about here?
Well, we're really hoping that probably right around the time then that this gets posted live, that we should hopefully have the second adventure pack, Fire on the Eastham Net, available on our website for print and play and download.
Is that how you pronounce that? The Eastham Net?
That's how I pronounce it. I found out recently that I'm maybe the only person in the world that pronounces it ALEP instead of ALEP. So you don't take my word for it. But that's how I pronounce it. Yeah. So we're hoping to have that out, since it is about 2 weeks for those that order it from Make Playing Cards. So in theory, we want it to be able to be available to bring to Con of the Rings for anybody that would want to do so, that hopefully it would get shipped to them in time before they head out to Minnesota.
Yeah, and then what about further on the horizon? Are you at do you have permission to talk a little bit about further out? I know that
absolutely.
So I know that there's plans to release a whole cycle. Is that going? Is there plans to go beyond this cycle to a next cycle? You guys just released Scouring of the Shire for anybody who wants to, complete or have a capstone for their saga thing. So
sure. Yeah, we're still planning on the whole cycle of 6 adventure packs here. We're kind of trying a new thing here where we're play testing adventure packs 3 and 4 sort of in tandem with each other, where we've kind of done it just one at a time prior to this point.
Is that because of mechanics of the quest, or is that just because of ease of
it's mostly just because we have enough play testers that we can kind of split them up, so where we can get like fresh eyes on a quest. So we're having half the group do one, half the group do the other, and then we'll switch them over. But we're doing that, and actually just last week we kind of got all of our player cards out of the scratch design folder and set up for what a potential second cycle would look like. So we're getting to work on cycle 2, at least the player card portion of it, see what archetypes we're trying to shore up there and what sort of cards we want to put in that potential deluxe and 6 adventure packs.
I have a question related to that, because I know that at least I haven't played. I'm in the middle of another project for my own podcast, so I haven't played the ALEP stuff too much, but I do know enough about it. But it seems like you didn't create any new archetypes with this with the ALEP stuff. You've just kind of added to the already existing stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, there's still 5 more APs to come out, so half the cycle is still out there. So maybe you'll have some new archetypes out there. But has it been a thing to maybe think about creating? I don't want to back you into a hole, and I guess if you're dying to know, you can go right to the ALEP, right to ALEP, and go to the Discord server, and you can figure out all the stuff that's going on. But I have refused to do that because I like to think of this as new product, and I want to treat it as such. So, have you guys thought about creating new archetypes instead of just expanding and making the old ones better?
Yes, yeah, definitely. I think one of the big design goals was definitely to shore up some stuff, but then also to not be too overwhelming in the amount of new things we put in. So we wanted one sort of new mechanic in the cycle, which we chose to use the devoted keyword.
The devoted, right? Yep.
Which allows you to not need a resource match if all of your heroes share a trait with an ally. And then, yes, one of our future adventure packs will be an entirely new mechanic. So we'll be releasing one new trait-based deck archetype here later on in the cycle. They just haven't come out yet.
I got you.
For us.
Okay. And I was thinking, like, when the Arid Mithrin cycle came out, which is going to be one of the cycles that we are going to see at Con of the Rings, right? Is that's when they introduced the Dale archetype,
Yep.
and they were like, "Oh, Dale attachments, let's go, let's do this," right? And then the last cycle was the contract. So I was wondering if there was some overarching new archetype that ALEP was thinking about, like a new race.
Yeah,
or
I would say that for our cycle, it would probably be more akin to like the Woodman deck that sort of formed in the Arid Mithrin cycle as well. It's not going to be quite as full-fleshed and large and powerful as Dale. So it'll be more of like a sub-themed deck that we'll be seeing.
Sorry, I didn't realize that my lights were off down here, so I had to turn on my lights.
You were just mood lighting.
It's like I felt like I was sitting around a campfire and my face was just lit like like that. Well, what I do know is that the cards you guys have put out, the player cards, the player cards that you guys have put out have been phenomenal. They've really taken a couple of lackluster archetypes and really made them more exciting. To think about a solo victory display deck using Fatty Bulger, the lore Fatty Bulger, like that's exciting for the Hobbit lover in me. So there's a lot of things that you guys are doing that I really appreciate and love. So kudos to you and the team.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Well, we could talk about the expected stuff forever and ever, but I think you came here to spoil a card for us, right?
I did, yes.
Do you want to tell us what this card is? It's going to be right over there.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so the card that we've got here today is Guided by Fate. It's a 1-cost neutral attachment that is unique and is a condition. And the text for it is attached to a hero. And when you would shuffle a card with the encounter keyword into the encounter deck, shuffle it into the top 5 cards instead. The card also has an action where if the encounter deck has more than 5 cards in it, exhaust Guided by Fate and raise your threat by 1 to shuffle the top card of the encounter discard pile into the encounter deck.
Wow. Okay. So first of all, this is great timing because one of the things that that Ted Grant and I have talked about for the past couple of episodes is what kind of cards do you bring to the con of the rings? And so one of the things that end up triggering more often are the encounter, right? The
Mhm.
player cards with the encounter keyword, right? Tom Bombadil, the Eagles of the North, the Rangers of the North, and then Wind to the Sea. Is that the spirit one?
Wind
You're,
from the sea, I think.
Wind from the
yeah,
sea, right?
that sounds right.
My preposition
You're
was
really
backwards.
close though. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, and it only impacts those four cards. But if you're going to be playing them at the con, because those cards you shuffle through your encounter deck way more often, like this card seems to be a card to put in your deck to help with that,
Mhm.
or maybe not. Maybe you don't need it. Maybe this is to help the solo player play those cards more effectively because in a four-player game you are going to be cycling through your encounter deck. I don't know. It seems good in all player counts, but what's give us the little behind the scenes, like what's going on, where this card originated from, or if you know, or what the intention of the card is.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's really a twofold sort of card. The main piece, like you said, is for the encounter keyword cards. I do think that typically when I've played them, at least they are much better in multiplayer, just because you see so much more of the encounter deck. That they're much more likely to pop up. So we wanted to be able to make them maybe a little bit more enticing for a lower player count. Just give you a chance to see it, because for the most part, I think pretty much the Eagle one's the one that gets played regularly. The other
Mm-hmm.
three are a little bit more niche. And then the other piece that we really wanted to help out with was some of those quests that have objectives that end up going to your discard pile and you lose them forever. Thinking like Framsburg as kind of a key example. To be able to just give that solo player a chance to, oh no, I missed it, I don't want to play 20 more rounds here, I can shuffle that into the deck and hopefully catch it next time, not as a shadow card sort of thing.
Yeah. And I mean, this is pretty straightforward. It's not a trait restricted card. So if you're playing an Eagle deck, you don't have to have an Eagle hero, or if you're playing Hobbits to get out Pombadil, you don't need to have Hobbits or anything. So it can go on any hero. Um, and I think this is where the playtesting comes in, right? Is that number 5 as opposed to 10? Like, what was the like what was that the original number? Or did it get play tested down? Did it get play tested up? Or like,
Yeah, I think 5 was pretty much the original number. I think at one point maybe it had actually didn't have a restriction. But I think 5, yeah, right. 5 was about the sweet spot, because in a 4-player game, I guess if you're using it, you can almost guarantee that you're seeing it. But typically, this is probably going to be used more in that lower player count. So you still got a chance where it might still accidentally pop up as a shadow card for you or something like that, and you might not get as much use out of it as you were hoping to.
yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, you would imagine that this would be like, oh, I'm definitely going to see the encounter card. I'm definitely going to see the Eagles in the North or Tom Bombadil in the next turn or whenever.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not, because it can pop off as a shadow card, or if you clear if you're in that turn and you clear the quest card, the current quest, and then you have to, maybe it doesn't shuffle, but then you have to discard until you see an enemy or something, like there's a lot of weird
Right.
um, weird things that can happen here. So it's not necessarily a guarantee to see your encounter card pop off that you want. But you can mitigate that, I assume. Like you have cards like Farsighted, and you have like a lot of encounter control cards that you can manipulate the deck with and stuff like that. You can use Furial to discard cards and things like that, so that you can really put your card in there. Ted, what do you? I see you're looking at me, so I'm wondering if
What?
you have.
Just staring at your handsome face, like always.
Well, right.
Nothing different.
What is your original? What's your thoughts on this?
I really like this card. I'd say the closest thing that exists in the official card pool is probably Shadow of the Past. Right? Shadow of the Past was that neutral 2-cost card where you could take the top card of the discard pile and then you put it directly on top. And that was useful in a handful of scenarios, like Framsburg is a great example. It's a good card to help combat that scenario. Roscabel comes to mind when you're looking for the Athelas plants.
Gollum gets shuffled back into the encounter deck, right?
Mm-hmm. So there's a handful of quests, and certainly improving the encounter cards. I think that's the player's number one complaint is they're like, I play this, I play my Win from the Sea or Hey Tom Bobadil, and you don't see the return on it. Right? Like, where's the return on your investment? That's why people don't play them. This is a pretty, I think, a really good and fair way to combat it because, you have to draw this card into your hand, and then you have to get your encounter cards, which you can only have 3 of by the normal rules. And then additionally, you might get your encounter card, you might draw your whatever your encounter card is, Win from the Sea, before you get this card. And then you're like, do I play it now or do I wait to get my Guided by Fate out? So
right.
It's not some like crazy game-changing card, but it pushes those cards, I think, in the right direction. And even at secondary action, even if you draw this by itself, being able to, they added the threat raise. I wonder if that part came afterwards in the design, where someone's like, well, let's have it do something else. Let's have it shuffle a card. Let's have it, work with the encounter deck. But then to raise your threat by 1, you can't just do that without a cost, essentially, which I think is extremely important.
Yeah, we really didn't want it to completely negate any reason you would ever run Shadows of the Past, I think, because like you said, that's still a really great tech card for a lot of scenarios because it does put it right on top. So I think without the threat raise, we were seeing I think it encroached too much on Shadows of the Past toes if you could just do it every round for free.
And on top of it all, it's a condition attachment. So if someone puts this out, you can throw it on your Miner of the Iron Hills and be like, no.
Right.
Guided by nothing.
Right. Guided.
Not guided, says
not
Miner of the Iron Hills.
By not fate.
Yeah.
Right. Elrond can get rid of it too, right?
Exactly.
Elrond is, I guide myself by fate.
Yeah.
Just like getting rid of unexpected courage. Yeah, so that second action, without playing it, again, I'm not officially part of the ALEP stuff. I wanted to make sure that I had my own stuff to be able to, or my own ability to critique this without any sort of skin in the game, so to speak. But it does seem like you could repeatably do, like, if I had a choice between putting Shadow of the Past and this card into play, I feel like this card wins all the time, right? Because it's less cost, it's repeatable, and you just have to increase your threat by 1. And you don't want to do it all the time, but you can do it whenever you want, as opposed to Shadow of the Past, which is an event, which is just one time, here you go, right? I don't know. It seems like without the first part of it, the second part is good standalone all by itself. Better than Shadow of the Past.
I think
it has some use, but I think both parts work with it pretty well. But yeah, please chime in, Eric.
Yeah, I think the big difference is just going to be that Shadows puts it right on top of the deck for you, so you can kind of plan your next turn out, where this one does just shuffle that card back into the deck. So
it does.
I agree, though. I think given the choice, I'd probably rather have this one that I can play onto the table and have ready to use when I need it than have to hope I've drawn into Shadow of the Past at the right time.
So why more than 5 cards? If the encounter deck has more than 5 cards?
That's kind of where we found, and again, kind of that sweet spot of just making sure that you weren't guaranteeing that you were going to see the card that you wanted. We didn't want to set up a situation where you could repeatedly, if you got into a situation where you had an empty encounter deck, just keep popping the same 2-threat location on top of the deck every time.
Right.
So.
Yeah. As an aside, Eric, let me just say that I totally appreciate you as one of the ALEP crew, because when I come on and talk to and Caleb is on the show and he designs all these cards, like, he has so much floating around the head, it's really hard for me to ask specific questions and get like reasonable answers, because he has so many cards floating around in his head.
Sure,
I'm sure that you do too, but it's a little bit different because there's like the active ALEP crew is like 50 people. So like you have a whole team of people working on this. So I feel less bad about asking you, super specific questions about the card. Like, why did you guys think about this?
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm not trying to put you on the spot too much. I'm super interested in the kind of the origins of the card itself. But who came up with the idea of this card? Like, I mean, it's pretty obvious that the card pool needed something like this, or it's not. The card pool can use something like this, but whose head it came out of?
I'm not 100% sure on this one. I'm just scrolling through the cards channel right now, actually.
The card
typically, if I
channel.
don't know exactly where it came from, that usually is a pretty good chance that it was a C-stand design.
Right.
But I know that around the springtime, this one did undergo a fairly decent change. And it looks like it was a bit of a crowdsourced decision to kind of get all the pieces there. So I think originally it was like C-stand wanting a card to fill this role, and then it just molding itself into this current shape over the course of a bunch of different people looking at it and play testing it.
Right. That's cool. When you play test these cards, do you set the card that you want to play test like off to the side? Well, you probably don't do that because you're playing digitally, probably. You were probably playing Dragon cards before Dragon cards was Dragon cards, right?
Yes. Yeah, we got Dragon cards about 2 months before everybody else did. So we were using Octagon before that, but yeah, we've been using Dragon for a while now.
And I guess you can still put the cards off to the side. Like, you could create them and put them off to the side and say, hey, let me see how this works by putting these cards here. And then if I need it, I'll put, I don't know. Well, you've play tested this. So where does this go? So it's obvious it goes into those decks where you're going to use those encounter cards, but is there any particular surprise or anything that comes out? It's like, hey, this is one of those things that you may want to think about putting here.
I don't think this one has too many surprises really to it. It does do pretty much what you think it does after first read there. Right. I think I liked it best with Wind from the Sea and Tom Bombadil out of all of them, because your other two surge and you get all the encounter cards you want anyway and just get the ally. But knowing that you're going to get Tom with his extra willpower, or knowing that you're going to get all those extra readies beforehand, or at least having a pretty good chance that it might be coming this round, it makes those two cards in particular a lot more useful than they are if you're just, haphazardly draw into it, not knowing it was coming.
Yeah. And right before we went on, you were saying that you were looking up some corner case rules questions about the cards. What was about this particular card? I was going through my head, like, what corner cases would come up. I'm sure they're there, but I'm looking. I'm like, well, is there any scenario that doesn't have 5 cards in the encounter deck to begin with, or And I don't think that that's the case, but
yeah, the main one I think I was looking at, and I think I got some maybe Marvel Champions in the brain when I see the word "you." It gives me some makes me sweat a little bit because I don't exactly remember what it means.
He's defined this.
Right.
Which you is it? All of a sudden, there's a male
that
sheep playing with you.
Right. So I was just wanting to double check, what happens like if I have Guided by Fate in my play area, but another player shuffles Tom Bombadil into the encounter deck. What,
right.
Does my passive text on that affect it going into the top 5, or does it get shuffled into the whole enchilada there?
I would assume that it doesn't. Like, if it's got to be me, right? I have to have Guided by Fate and the card, right?
Yeah, and that's what I actually really like. I feel it's a really, really balanced design because it is unique. So, two players can't have this out at the same time. But it does, because of the second ability, it does sort of encourage, if you're going to play a 2-player game, for example, it encourages each player to run one set, I feel, of their own encounter cards. Because then you have at least, if you have more in the deck, you have maybe a bigger window or higher chance of more cards coming out to maybe sneak it back in by shuffling it with the action to then have that card come out and get its effect. So I feel like, again, it just like it pushes it right, like in the direction it wants to go without it just being like, well, I'm going to run encounter cards all my decks all the time.
Right.
like that's not really the case with this, but it's kind of like, oh, this would really gently assist that.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think being unique also, it pushed me, at least. It was not the type of attachment that I was probably putting 3 of in my deck either, unless I was playing Framsburg or Rossville or something where I really needed to find an objective in the encounter deck. So it's, even if it is something you're putting in your deck, it's probably not something you're seeing every time or every time before you find and want to play your encounter card and everything too.
Yeah. I really like this. I've said this on the pod a lot of times. I'll say it again, is that not every card in the card pool has to be a bomb card. Not everything has to be sneak attack Gandalf. Not everything has to be, these crazy effects that do all sorts of crazy things. A lot of times the best card in the game are just like support cards that help you get to where you want to go. And this is one of those cards. Like, you're not building a deck. You're not building your Guided by Fate deck, but if you're going to put together a Hobbit deck and you want to put in Tom Bombadil, all of a sudden it got a little easier to do that. You put in a couple of copies of Guided by Fate, you put your Eagle deck in, Eagle of the North, whatever, it just, the only thing that ends up happening is it seems like those archetypes already are hard to find space in a deck. Like, if I'm going to do this in an Eagle deck so I can bring out my Eagles of the North, what am I getting rid of to put in Guided by Fate? I don't know, and I'm not saying that that's a weakness of the card. What I'm saying is that it encourages players to make those decisions based on how you play and what you're looking for and what scenario it is. And so a card that can create all sorts of decisions is probably, in the truest sense of the game, the truest feeling of what you need for the game. So great job.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, even I was just thinking again on it. Even the second ability itself lends itself. There's some scenarios where Shadow of the Past, as we talked about, is kind of niche, and this does a very similar things. Where in those scenarios, I would run both. There's even some scenarios, for example, you just want to see certain enemies, or in particular, it's certain locations. Beneath the Sands comes to mind because you're looking for locations to come out that have the track keyword. And this is just sort of another tool to just put those encounter cards back into the deck because you need them to complete the scenario.
Challenge of the Wayne Riders when you can put those turns, and you have to flip over a bunch to get one turn result,
Right.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So
there's a hand. Yeah, there's again, like it's more scenarios than you. Like, I'm trying to go through it off the top of my head, but I can't think of every single one. So that means there's more than you, I think, initially think, right? So it's a very, very cool design. And of course, you guys always scour to find some pretty good artwork. And this Gandalf and I'm going to assume it's usually Gwahir, right? Even though he's not wearing his adorable, cute crown, so we can't confirm it. It could be another.
Could be Meneldor.
Yeah, it could be one of the other named eagles.
Landroval.
Or it could just be, it could just be like John the eagle. Like
Joe,
he showed up today.
Joe the eagle.
Like Joe the eagle's like, "What's up, G?
What's up, G?"
You know.
Oh, it's good. And so, yeah, Eric, good job. That's what we're saying. Good job on this. I'm going to let you take all the credit for it because you know that C stands over at Cardboard of the Rings. He's taking all the credit for it over there. So, you know, you have the
right, notorious ego on that guy, right?
Yeah, I know. Huge, the guy is. My God, all the credit that he takes, he never disperses it to anybody over there. No, but
rarely gives back too.
I know he does nothing for the community ever, and he never has any good ideas. He just sits there, takes credit. I'm just kidding. Chris, we love you, buddy. No, but since you're here and you're like the proxy for the whole ALEP, good design. I'm glad that this is part of the ALEP cards. I'm glad that this is here. It seems like this is a welcome addition to help make those encounter cards at least more playable in a solo or two-player game. So,
and potentially at Con of the Rings, right? If people are going to print off this card and play it or proxy it in some fashion to try it out, they'll get a chance to do that in the coming weeks.
Yeah, I was going to say, so at Con of the Rings, the hope is not only will you have let's make sure I get this right. The Oaths of the Rohirrim is the cycle name, or is that the big box name?
That's the cycle name. Yeah.
So you'll have the box which I'm losing track with.
Children of Eorl.
The Children of Eorl, right. So you'll have Children of Eorl out, you'll have the Scouring out, and you'll have the Altbert plot. So, and then this next one, what is the name of this next AP coming out?
Fire on the Eastamnet.
Oh, the Fire on the Eastamnet, right, because I can't ever pronounce Eastamnet, right?
Yeah,
Estamnet. Is it like column? Because it has MN together. So, you know,
Right.
column has MN together, and it's just an M. Eastamnet. I don't know.
That might be right. I might have our lead lore guy talk to me the second you guys post this episode online.
Yeah. I would love, because Tolkien was a philologist, and I don't claim to know how to pronounce everything and pronounce it well, but when something like that word comes out, I just want to get it right. You know, like the Galathon, like all the Sylvans have that Galathon. The DH is TH in
like Galathram.
It's Galathram, but it's like a little different. So I don't know. I look up all those little pieces of lore and pieces of philology just to honor Tolkien. But
for a guy who wrote the dictionary, it's not entirely clear to the rest of us.
Right. He actually wrote the dictionary. Oh, that's so funny. But at the con, they'll have, I guess at that point you'll have 6 ALEP products out for people, or 6 quests out, 4 products. So that'll be good. I plan on printing off the last 2. I haven't gotten the Scouring printed, and I haven't gotten obviously the the most recent one that hasn't been printed yet, but I plan on getting them printed. I got the other 4 scenarios printed and ready to go. So it's good. So let's talk a little bit about Con of the Rings. We're Card Talk itself is in the middle of this like what to bring to a con sort of thing. And Eric, you're going to the con for the first time, right?
Yeah. Yep. My first any sort of con experience. So pretty excited.
Oh, really? You haven't been to other gaming conventions at all?
I have not. No.
Have you ever been to? I don't know what you do for a living. Like I'm a teacher, and I go to teacher conventions sometimes. Do you have a professional? Do you go to professional conventions sometimes?
Yeah, I've been to like those sorts of things, but
Okay.
never one where I get to go have fun.
Okay. Well, I was going to say it's not like that.
Right.
It's not like one of those things. Um, it's maybe in terms of some of the enthusiasm for what's being out there is
Yeah,
about the
instead of it
same.
just like one person, it's everybody. Instead of it just like the one guy hosting the event,
Right. Yeah.
everyone's excited to be there.
Yeah. So
And
I mean, I put out a thing right before we were recording, and just to see, what if people had any questions about Con of the Rings. And so, it's just a couple weeks away, and so Eric, I guess, since you're here and you're going first time, maybe I'll ask the question that people asked, and then I can get what you're expecting, and then Ted and I,
Okay.
having been there, we can we can say yes, you're right, or well, no, you're not right at all.
it's only the third convention. I mean, the first one was 2018. I went in 2019. 2020 was canceled, and then now we're resuming. And of course, now we're resuming under this. At the time we're recording this, too, nothing has changed that we're aware of as far as the game center policies concerning COVID. If people, which might be some of the questions that people, I haven't seen them yet, as David digs them out. So there is a newsletter that you can get at their website. You can sign up for. I want to say it's. Should look it up.
ConOfTheRingsMN.com.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep.
So yeah, check that out. Sign up for the newsletter if you're not. Check the website for postings. If anything changes as far as any, fingers crossed, just make sure to be aware before you show up.
Right. Okay. So there's two questions that I have. Okay. And so the first one is really what I don't know. Maybe this will be fun to ask Eric. It says the first one is, I'm a new player in the past couple of years or so. Eric, I don't know how long you've been a player of the game.
Like 4 years or so now, I think.
Okay. And they say that they've never been to one of these cons or any sort of event before. And so, what are some of the best pieces of advice for someone like me going in? So, that's the first one. And I think that that's really good advice. So, Eric, as you plan to go in here to your first con, what's your expectation, and what are some things that you're thinking is going to happen, and what are some things that you're going to do that maybe you wouldn't normally do when you meet 130 people you've never seen before in your life?
Yeah, no,
No,
that's going to be
128. He's seen you and me.
Right.
great. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a question that I have as well. Like how many decks am I going to end up packing? How many sideboard cards am I going to bring in case something doesn't work? All those sorts of things. I know that there's a structure in terms of like they have some set aside times where everybody's playing one particular quest, but for the most part, other than those things, it's kind of just free form. So I think for me, the toughest thing is going to be just trying to fit in. I'm fairly active within both ALEP and some parts of the online community. Like there's a lot of people that I've never had the opportunity to meet and actually sit down and play a game with before. So trying to see if I can play games with people I've only ever played with on Octagon and Dragon is kind of my priority and really my only expectation, I think.
Right. And so after those 6 or 7 hours, what are you going to do? No, I'm just kidding.
Right. Yeah.
Right. No, I mean, and that's the thing. So I think you bring up a good point. A good question there that's related to the question from the person who posted this is, how many decks do I bring? What kind of sideboard cards? And Ted, Grant, and I have been talking about this in our little series here. But I think like when you think about bringing your collection to the con, I don't think last year I brought my whole collection, and that was the silliest thing that I ever did, right? And so like I had all my cards, and I was like, well, who knows who's gonna there's so many scenarios floating around that the only thing you should really need to bring is probably the Haradrim and Arid Mithrin cycle, because if you want to play some other scenario, somebody else will have that scenario somewhere and you can play it. So in terms of player decks, I think, 5, you bring 5 decks, you're probably looking pretty good. 7 maybe, as like a top number, but I will say, and Ted, correct, I don't know, like you can jump in here too. Like I think
Sure,
that those numbers, I think that does, but like Duran's father, he brings 13, like he's got the space for 13 decks, so he brings 13 decks. I don't know, and you end up sharing, like giving your deck to somebody to use, and then somebody will let you borrow somebody else's deck. That's one of the universal achievements this year, to play with somebody else's deck. Everybody plays with everybody else's deck. That's an E. And then and then it's and that's going to be cool. But I think 5 to 7 decks is fine, and then you should always have Keena's Lances ready to go in every deck you ever play. Like always have that in your sideboard, because somebody will be running a victory display deck, and you will, even if you just have to add it, you have a 50 card deck and you're like, oh, I can't add Keena's Lances, doesn't matter if it's 53, you'll be fine. Extra sleeves that can handle your sideboard for the color that you want, things like that.
I can
go ahead, Ted.
Offer some advice.
Yeah.
So yeah, but bring as many decks as a new player or someone attending the con the first time. Bring as many decks as you feel you want to construct, but definitely you bring more than one. I'd say probably for me, like 4 is the magic number. You can stretch it to 5, 6 if you want to. Yeah, some people bring 13. That's totally cool. But bring enough so you have, first of all, variation, because if you're going to be playing for 2.5, 3 days straight, you don't want to be stuck playing the same deck if you're going to be playing 4 or more games a day, right? Probably more. It's a great question. So yeah, bring a couple decks, probably 4 or 5. I recommend building, as David had mentioned, bring a sideboard for a couple decks that consists of mostly, if you have any unique attachments in your decks, think about other cards you could possibly use, especially like allies. If you're like, okay, I have a tactics deck and I got Mental Door in it, it's just a generic tactics deck on an Eagle deck, and someone shows up with an Eagle deck and they got Mental Door in it, well, have some other allies that you could substitute for that unique ally in your deck. Same thing if you got copies of Gandalf in your deck, right? Someone might bring the hero and really want to play it. So it's really good to have a sideboard, like 10 to 15 cards, things you can just sort of switch out on the fly. And I recommend that for heroes as well. So I always bring all of my heroes to a convention, like Gen Con, Con of the Rings, whatever, because I just want them, like, if I'm trying to, you sit down and the first thing, like figuring out who's playing what at these conventions is like half of the game.
Right.
It's like, you got to figure out where you're going to play. And then like, okay, like we need someone who can, to handle locations and who can handle combat the best, and who's going to pump out willpower, and who's got tricks, niche cards for the
healing is always big.
Healing, yeah, all these mechanics, all these things you want to cover in a 4-player game. So it's good to, again, have all the heroes at your disposal. So it's like, okay, like, I need my deck to have willpower, and I have Spirit Aowen in it. Someone's deck really, really wants to function with Tactics Aowen in it. I can just substitute some other spirit hero. That's
some other 4 willpower spirit hero.
Well, yeah, she's got a great ability for multiplayer, by the way, Spirit Aowen, right?
Yeah, she does.
She can pump up day willpower, but it's like, okay, well, you could find someone else to swap out. So that's probably the best advice I would offer. Bring plenty of decks. Don't bring your whole collection, because you're going to get tired. You're going to be wondering like where it is, and like bringing it back and forth to the room, or having to run back to the room to get cards. So have a handful of cards at the ready, including heroes, and enough decks where you won't get tired and to switch things around.
I think the other thing is that one of the things that I was a little timid last year. I know that's hard to believe, but I was a little timid at last Con of the Rings, because I felt like I didn't know as many people. Card Talk was less popular or less known. I don't know. It's probably the same amount of popular, right? But but I mean, it's more known now. So whatever. But I feel like there was downtime, because as you're finishing up a game, and this is my 20th game in a row that I've played with Ted Bannock, I want to find somebody else to play with. And then you're like, Eric, you said, you're going off to find somebody else, but they're halfway through Ghost of Framsburg, which is another 2 hours. You're like, what do I do? You're like, oh, I have no idea, And so then I'm just standing there. The game center is great because there's food and you can shop around for some product or whatever. But like that's not all there is. So there can be some downtime. But the thing that I want to do is I'm gonna scan the room, and everybody out there hold me to it. I'm gonna scan the room. I'm gonna see what games are breaking up, and as soon as a game breaks up, I'm gonna go over to that group. I'd be like, hey, can I jump in and do that? And I think that this community, and Eric, you've been around the community long enough, and Ted can probably vouch for this better than anybody, is that this is the community that will say, yeah, let's go, let's do this, and so it'll be amazing, and so that's where I think that maybe where I needed to get a little bit better is just like not be as timid about approaching people, because whatever, we're all here to play Lord of the Rings, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
everyone came for the exact same reason that you did.
Right.
So keep that in mind.
And to play, not Grant, you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Can you give us? I'm just along for the ride, just for the show here.
Yeah, I'm just along for the ride.
Perfect.
So we were just finishing up our first question about the Con of the Rings, and we were talking about, like, as a new person going to Con of the Rings, what should I expect? And we were talking about how many decks to bring, like what kind of stuff to bring. I may leave even like a lot of my cutesy like things at home. Like I have some minis that I won from, I may leave this stuff at home. I don't know. I may not, because this may be the place that everybody appreciates it. I bring out my minis and my wife's like, what is that brown thing that you have? I'm like, that's Radagast. He's one of the Five Astari. How can you just call him a brown turdy poppy poo? And like, I may bring that because the stuff that I bring, probably people will appreciate a little bit more than the run of the mill. But, I don't know. We'll see how that goes. This is the time to bring out your, I guess this is the time to bring out all your alt arts that you want to show off. People will be fascinated by that if you have any of those printed off. I don't know. It's good stuff. Ted, anything else to add to that question?
Yeah. Just make sure you bring your tokens. Bring a couple extra sleeves or an extra pack of sleeves in case you rip one. And enough people got to bring their encounter cards, right? And if there's a scenario too, like the con is focusing on two particular scenarios, but if you're like, man, I've been dying to get a 4-player game of
Passage Through Mirkwood.
Nightmare Druid Forest.
Well, those are two opposite ends of the spectrum.
And followed by Passage Through Mirkwood, so we can feel better about losing to the Nightmare scenario. Like bring that scenario, and then, as David said, don't be shy to approach people, or as people approach you, say, hey, we're running this. I'm looking for more players. People are there to game and enjoy it. So along with that, if you're bringing the encounter cards, one weird mechanic, since that kind of ties into the card that we spoiled, we talked about bringing encounter cards to shuffle into the deck. If people have their cards sleeved and you throw in your 3 copies of Tom Bombadil, you got to have the sleeves to match it up. Right. So if you're bringing something that people don't think about, so bring a couple extra sleeves for your encounter deck if you have them sleeved, which I highly recommend for anyone bringing it. Just sleeve all your cards all the time. People show up without it sleeved and like, oh, well, it's teach his own.
What's this funny looking Boromir here with 5 arrows sticking out of him?
So extra sleeves, and just keep that in mind. Or if you really, really want to go the extra mile, I'll probably bring, since there's not that many encounter cards, there's like 4 or 5. Right, there's like one in every sphere.
There's one in every sphere, so it's 4. Yeah.
Right, so that's only an extra 12. I always have those cards sleeved anyway. I'll probably just throw them. I'll probably bring them with me. And if someone's like shuffling Tom Bombadil, I'll just grab my copy if I'm using my encounter cards. is another good tip.
Yeah. And that way you have them. And that's one of the things that happens not on purpose, but accidentally. Like somebody's looking for their tactics A when they can't find it, yours is right there, and you say, oh, here, just play with mine. Just make sure you get your cards back, or make sure you give the cards that you borrowed back, because that can happen. And so you end up with, you've collected now, 17 copies of Quick Strike.
Yeah,
because,
it's like, oh, I have six copies of unexpected courage in my deck. That's weird. Oh, also 3 of them are in 3 different sleeves.
Right.
So another reason for sleeves too, it makes it super easy when you scoop up your deck to just do a quick scan. I always flip my cards over and grab the ones that are different colored sleeves and make sure to hand them back to anybody who played attachments on me, or an ally shifted over to me or something like that.
It's funny because I love Cardboard of the Rings, and they made sleeves for everybody, but I feel like everybody's going to use those sleeves at the Con of the Rings. And so I'm not going to sleeve anything in the Cardboard of the Rings sleeves, because I don't want to have my cards looking exactly like everybody else's. So
yeah,
that's going to be.
I tend to try to put like some unique sleeves on. Right. So don't worry about that. It's pretty rare that you run into someone that has the exact same sleeve, but it happens. It happens.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, there's only so many
same...
sleeve manufacturers, and there's only so many that are good. So I guess that, the last thing that I will say is, if you're staying at the hotel, okay, I would suggest that that's the site of the con too. Like, because there's so many people playing Lord of the Rings that stay at the hotel, which is literally less than a block from the game center, that you walk back and it's 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, whatever, and you're like, let's play Nightmare Wastes of Eriador, right? Let's just do it. And that's, and then you play till 4 o'clock in the morning, right, Ted? And
you're
so,
I got another game in like a couple hours.
Right. Like that's so. Like, I remember all 3 nights that I was at the con, I played at the hotel. I don't want to say just as much, but I played several scenarios at the hotel after the game center closed. I was up till 2 or 3 in the morning, playing and having fun and doing that sort of stuff. So I don't know. So
yeah, something to keep in mind, that there's going to be people constantly walking back and forth between the two, and you'll bump into people there and schedule times to meet up. So good stuff to keep in mind.
Yeah.
So what's our next? We have one other question, David.
One other question. Why, you don't want to keep talking about this? Also keep in mind that you
tip number 75. Yes. No, I think we covered the basics.
Well, I was just going to
point out some things just for people that haven't gone before, just little, like the extra sleeves, like
some things you never think of.
You don't think about, but if you remember, you'll like, I'm really glad I brought these.
Mm-hmm.
Keep in mind also the designers will probably be there. I know that Caleb is planning to show up. MJ, Nate French showed up to the one in 2019. So, there's a chance that, you can fanboy, fangirl over the designers of the game, and keep that in mind. So, and that's always a cool experience, is to meet those folks. Okay. Second question, but this may or may not have anything to do with the con. It has something more maybe to do. And Eric, we talked about this beforehand. And Grant, I don't know, you're coming in a little bit late, but maybe I'm sure that you have seen this. But there's a new product. The person who posted it called a new scenario, but I don't even want to call it a new product. I don't want to even call it a new scenario. It's a new product called the Dark of Mirkwood. And so this is kind of adjacent to the con, but this person is asking us what our thoughts are about what that could be. I have some ideas about what it could be. So it does list for $20.99. So let's eliminate what it's not. It's not a whole cycle like people have been talking about, which has been reskinned, and we're going to sell now the whole cycle of the Mirkwood, and do that. That would be, it may be 2 scenarios from the cycle, but it's not the whole cycle reskinned. Like I don't know if you remember back in the day with the French article, and they were talking about repackaging, I don't know, whatever. So it's not that. What could it be? Grant, have you heard about this?
I saw the post go up on Facebook earlier today, but I didn't get, obviously with his work, and I didn't get a chance to actually look at it. But of things it could be a new box, like the Saga expansions for like the Hobbit, but a standalone one, like a print on demand. So you get a couple of quests with it, and that's it. Or it could literally be just a print on demand scenario.
Right, like a new print on demand scenario.
Yeah.
Eric, what do you think? Oh, go ahead. Keep going, Grant. I thought you were done. Sorry.
And just another thing, it could literally be like what they released a few years ago with the Woodland Realm and the Wizard's Quest. It could be another two-parter to that.
Mm-hmm.
I said the same thing offline, Grant. I had that exact same thought where I said, well, maybe it's like a custom, it's like a competitive kit or a custom scenario kit. Yeah. And then my secondary thought was they already, the first kit kind of covered Mirkwood, right? Woodland Realm and Wizard's Quest already did the Mirkwood theme. So I'm like, would they go back to that? So, but I'm not going to rule it out though either. That it's a custom scenario kit of some fashion.
Well, I agree with you. Would they really go back when they've got such a vibrant lore that they could have went? Obviously, they've done Mirkwood, they've done Moria. They could do Rune as a custom scenario kit. They could do Angmar. There's so much other places which haven't been tackled yet. It doesn't make sense for them to go back to Mirkwood, even because they've literally just done Mirkwood a couple of years ago.
What about you, Eric? Do you have any idea what it could be?
I don't have any idea, but I've got guesses, just like everybody else.
What are your guesses? Yeah, none of us have any inside information.
I don't know. I think from looking at the sheet that it came on, because it was priced at $20 and called a scenario pack, that is exactly how Dreadnought was listed and priced prior to the new price increases. So I would probably lean toward a new standalone scenario.
But it being an epic multiplayer, maybe.
Potentially. The only other kind of piece of information we had was that Game Center had said that, for their pop-up Gen Con that's happening here in mid-September, they were going to have big group events for Lord of the Rings and Arkham. So there's nothing actually tying these two together yet, but it certainly is possible that this could be like a big group scenario for Lord of the Rings as well. And as for Mirkwood, I don't know. I think the pessimist in me would just say probably that they have tons and tons and tons of Mirkwood art assets saved up. So that could be why they went back to Mirkwood, is just didn't have to
less production,
much new art,
like less cost. Yeah, that
exactly.
Actually makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I could see it being a new epic multiplayer, and maybe it functions because Dreadnought was very different, right, than the previous two. It had this real time play mechanic. Right. And that play style's like a bittersweetness. It has so many advantages, but then there's parts of it I don't like too. But I really enjoy Dreadnought though overall. So maybe it's another epic multiplayer. That's
so at Con of the Rings, are we going to play epic multiplayer Dreadnought, or not epic multiplayer, but multiplayer Dreadnought, and have all the people play at once, and have the Dreadnought have like a bajillion hit points, and what I forget exactly how it scales, but I know that you can play it with any number of players. So
I believe it's on the schedule to have the entire con or as many people participate as they can get to play Dreadnought at the same time. So
right.
It's got
well, I knew it
whatever,
was
like 1,000 hit points or something, whatever it's going to scale to.
You need to print off one huge copy, like the ring girls in boxing that hold up like round one and they walk around the ring. Like, just print off a big, huge, epic copy of the Dreadnought and have somebody walk around with it with the number of hit points remaining on it, like flip it over.
I've seen, the scenario that came out in Arkham before that kind of, I think, was similar to this. It's called the it's called the Blob
that ate everything.
The Blob that ate everything. And at Gen Con, they had a big marker board to keep track of hit points.
That's so funny.
So I imagine we're going to have something similar that you're talking about, David, to do that. Someone's got to like keep track of it where everyone can see.
That's funny. I can't wait. Yeah, so the other thing that it could be is a one kit that includes the Oath and the Caves of Nibeldoom. It could be that as a regular release as opposed to part of the um, the 2-player starter.
Yeah, maybe repackaging those with regular art, so they're also more available instead of in that really more hard to get, I think now,
Right.
Special starter kit.
God forbid the collector's edition be a collector's item. Like that's what that. I don't know if you guys have the collector's edition or not, but it is the collector's edition, so it should be pretty. It shouldn't be something necessarily easy to get. I don't think. Like something that you get if you're a collector, right? I don't know. But the problem is that everybody that I talk to is always a collector of this game, right? Like all of us love to collect the game and love the art and love everything about it. Like I love it so much that I'm printing out fan-made creations because they do such a good job with it. So,
Right.
So I don't know. So those are the options. I don't know. I would love it to be a new scenario. I would love it to be a POD.
Yeah, a strong feeling that it is. I think Eric's hunch is right. His guess, but it could be any of one of the things that we named. It could be it could be a new kit, a custom kit. It could be POD. Well, time will tell.
Yeah, I
Tolkien
guess so.
fans.
Yeah. Okay. Well, those are all the questions we have about the con. But that first one really covered just about everything that needed to be covered. And so, Eric, thank you so much for coming on the show and spending way too long with us, I guess. Every time I have guests come on, I'm like, 45 minutes, that's it. An hour and a half later, Eric's still here and he's being very patient. So, Eric, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me back again. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, maybe we can get you, when AP4 gets released. It seems like every other product you're coming on the show doing something. So, we'll touch base with ALEP and see what the next deluxe is going to look like. No,
perfect. That sounds fun.
Okay, good. Okay, everybody. You know what we didn't do?
Did you want to ring?
I know we don't ring it. Anytime we spoil a card, we just do thumbs up, thumbs to the side, or thumbs down.
That's right.
I forgot about that. So, Eric, I don't know if you're a fan of the show or not, but I always end the show and I was like, highly scientific yet arbitrary method, where we ring a card on a scale from 1 to 10. But we only do it with cards that we've played, and we are out in the card pool, and this is obviously a spoiler, so we haven't been able to really play it. So we're just going to have to do thumbs up, thumbs to the side, thumbs down. Grant has seen the card, but he didn't get a chance to talk about it, so he can go. But Eric, you're the guest. You get to go first. Do you want to, or not first? You get to choose. Do you want to talk about the card first, second, third, or fourth?
Oh, I'll go fourth. I'll.
Oh, you're going to let us do it?
Exactly.
Okay, so I'll go first. For all those things that I say, I think that this is not necessarily a bomb card. I just like that it has a niche and it fits really nicely, and it helps me as a solo player play more cards in the card pool. So for that, I'm going to give it a thumbs up. Ted, what do you think?
Yeah, give it a thumbs up as well, because it's because pretty much what you said there, because it's not a bomb card. I'm very critical of player created content. And I'm open to ALEP stuff the most because I know it gets the most rigorous testing than some of the other stuff that's been developed, in the last 10 years or whatever. So because it's not this like crazy insane card, I'm like, oh, this is just like perfectly balanced. Like I give it a good rating. Thumbs up. Grant?
Well, I haven't had much time to look over the card, but from what I've seen, I'm giving it a thumbs up. It seems to be very well balanced for what it does. it's a cheaper version of Shadow of the Past, which is always nice. So yeah, I'm gonna give it a thumbs up.
Okay, and Eric, last but certainly not least, I don't have a Palantir in front of me, and I can't see the future, but I feel like I know where you may go with this.
Yeah, no, 2 thumbs way down for this one.
Yeah, that's horrible. Anything developed by C-Stan.
No, I think a thumbs up for me as well on this one for basically the same reasons you were saying, Dave. Just any card that makes me look at cards that I never play, or maybe look back at quests that I really avoid trying to play, it is a card that I like to see show up. Just let me see some things that I don't normally do and try them out. So it gets a thumbs up for me for that exact same reason too.
Good. Okay, well, everybody, join us again next week as we continue our little series on con cards that you want to bring to the con. Everybody, have a great day.
Do you love the content? Here's what you can do to stay connected. Become a patron. The money collected through Patreon goes into keeping the lights on here at the podcast. We love our patrons, and you can join at many different levels. Visit patreon.com/cardtalk2018. You can subscribe to us, whether you're watching our YouTube channel or you're listening to us in your favorite podcatcher. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications of all our new episodes. Didn't know we were an audio podcast? Find us by searching Card Talk to get access to our 120 plus regular episodes. Didn't know we were a video channel? Find us by searching Card Talk LOTR LCG on YouTube. And there you can find not only our regular episodes, but you can find our bonus playthroughs and other content related to the game. Want to get a hold of Ted, Grant, or myself? Feel free to email the podcast at cardtalk2018@gmail.com.